I got a Steam Deck a few months back, and I gotta be honest, it's pretty fantastic. I've always really liked Steam, but never had a PC to take full advantage, so I've mainly stuck to things I could run and fleshing out my user profile. A lot of Steam games have these random card drops based on how long you play each title. Typically people just resell them on Marketplace to get money for more games, but if you collect a full set, you can craft them into a badge. Occasionally, I'll go on a badge crafting spree myself. Cards don't cost very much, so I consider it a cheap thrill. Crafting badges also gives you sweet little bonuses like emoticons or profile backgrounds, but one of the cooler things you can get are game coupons. Now, I don't really know how the selection pool works. I've never seen any well-known games in here, so don't go in expecting to get a coupon for like the Resident Evil 4 remake or something. But the variety here is still immense. You can get almost anything out of these. From titles you would have never known about to Steam achievement spam. It's great for finding something new to play around with for a bit, and it's a fantastic tool for indie devs who want to get their game in front of more people. There's some recognizable titles in here too. The original Postal was a coupon at one point before Running with Scissors decided to make it free for everyone. Chad move. And Two Worlds 2!
Death seems to attract the taint.
Oh look, I gifted it to some poor sod. Yeah, that seems like kind of thing I'd do.
May your search prove taintful.
When I get one of these coupons, if the game is cheap and looks cool, I'll usually give it a shot. I've purchased about 1/5 of what's been shown to me, so I'd say it's pretty successful. The good news is, now that I have a Steam Deck, I'm able to go through my backlog and figure out games to cover on the channel. I considered covering Aversion this year for Halloween. It's actually a pretty good game, would even make for a great Halloween episode. But it's the type of game where doing a video on it would spoil the experience. It's one I'd recommend you go try for yourself. However, there is this one game I remember getting through the coupons. I got it pretty early on in my Steam experience, but I've only played it once. Despite that, I've never really stopped thinking about it. I think it's time to give it a shot. This thing's got no real coverage on YouTube, besides a video by Jim Sterling, some no commentary playthroughs, and official uploads of the soundtrack and announcement trailers. It started out as an unsuccessful Kickstarter, but was able to make it on Steam via Greenlight, back when that was still a thing. It barely has over 100 reviews, with a mixed reception to match. You know, I gotta say, this is some pretty fantastic art. Game at the very least looks good. How much did I pay for this anyways? Only 50 cents?
Sounds reasonable.
Luckily it works on Steam Deck with no tweaks, and the only issue I saw were these micro stutters that didn't bother me too much. Probably an easy fix, I just don't know how to do it myself. Press J for joypad or K for keyboard. Well, this is the Steam Deck, so I'd like to use the onboard controls. Let's just bring up the digital keyboard and type J. There we go. Oh, the directional buttons don't seem to work in the menus. That's a pet peeve of mine, but lots of games do that. I'm sure the actual levels themselves control with the D-pad. So I've always considered this a cardinal sin with 2D games. Regardless if your system's controller has a joystick or not, do not exclusively map movement controls to it. Give the player an option at the very least. I'm aware this is how it was back in the day with super old PC games. Hell, even Metal Slug, one of my favorite arcade series, does this. But, hot take, it's bad, was always bad back then, and will always be bad. You need digital movement for 2D games. Modern games like Guacamelee and Bloodstained manage to make things work with a control stick, but this game's not trying to be a modern 2D platformer. D-pad all the way with the classics. Anyways, I'm going to use a workaround so we can play with customized controls. Steam Deck has an option where you can remap any of the controls to correspond to what you want, whether it be joystick, keyboard, or mouse inputs, so it's possible for me to map all the controls to the Steam Deck's face buttons. Here's the custom profile I submitted to the community. It's mostly basic controls like D-pad movement and A to jump. Just remember, this is escape, This is K for enabling the keyboard controls. This is yes, and this is no. Got it? Good. Now let's give this another shot. So this game is clearly going for a retro game aesthetic, mainly DOS or Amiga era PC titles. Stuff that's before my time, so from my perspective it feels more like a lost Sega Genesis game. The presentation of its cutscenes specifically remind me a lot of Vector-Man, which isn't even a bad thing to be compared to. Regardless of perceived similarities to older titles, Mastema has fantastic visuals. These pixel art graphics are very good for a game no one's ever heard of. The menu and HUD designs are pretty good too, although I'm not the biggest fan of the health meter. As you take damage, the skin peels away and more of the skull's exposed. Looks tight to be honest, but it only provides a rough estimate rather than an accurate reading. The soul you play as has got some personality to him too, with different idle animations and some unique deaths. There's also these level intros that do a great job at getting you pumped up for the stage you're about to play. When you finish a stage, you also get these clear poses, which there's a handful of. It's clear they spent a lot of time conveying his character through the animations. Enemies are pretty lively too. It's a lot of stereotypical bad guys, bats, skeletons, devils and the like, but they all look fantastic. They explode into these completely over-the-top smoke skulls when you kill them, accompanied by an equally awesome sound effect. And the stages are just gorgeous. Some of the art in these is so good, it makes you want to stop and take a while to appreciate them. The game's music is excellent too, and it goes perfectly with its overall style. It's incredibly fitting, and I can tell the person behind it is very talented. Every track is a banger, and I've been listening to them a lot while working on this video. Honestly, this game's got a lot of good stuff going for it. Great art, great music, lots of personality. I wonder what the mixed reception is all about. Sure, that joystick setup was pretty crap, but I don't see... Oh, there it is. Dude, the programming in this game is super amateurish. Like, it feels really close to the stuff I made in Game Maker during Game Design 1. I get the feeling the dev did it all himself, which is pretty impressive, but at the same time, it comes really close to wrecking everything. The issues regarding it are just too widespread. Like, for example, a lot of the hitboxes fell off. The one on the main collectibles feels straight up anemic. It reminds me a lot of the rings in Sonic Chaos. Why am I not collecting these? I'm literally in sight of them. It's the same way with enemies and traps too, although it seems to be mainly in the player's favor there. I don't know how I'm not taking damage in either of these instances. At one point I opened up the quit menu and it seemed to make me invincible, but when I tried it later on, it didn't. Not that being able to do that is a good thing, but I don't understand why it did it in the first place. Some of the traps you can walk into and immediately die, when logically it doesn't really make sense, like these crushers. I don't get why rubbing up against them crushes me when I'm not underneath them. The invincibility frames are also really weird. They do exist, but they only protect you from a single type of damage at one time. So if you take damage and then walk into another damaging entity, you'll just take damage immediately. It makes it so enemies that fire sets of projectiles can just drain your health, or anywhere with a bunch of traps in one spot is basically a death sentence. It's weird. It makes any interaction with a damaging entity a gamble. There's also an issue with the game placing collectibles in areas that don't seem safe to navigate to, both in the sense of red herrings and stuff that's just way too risky.
What the hell is this?
The volume mixing can be pretty bad too. I mean, you already saw how bad that can get. However, I think the game's biggest offense is its awful jumping physics. On its own, it feels okay. It's whenever it has to interact with anything else that it falls apart. Here's a good example. I'm trying to jump out of this pit, right? So naturally, you would hold right and then press jump. And when you get to the top, you would continue to move right and out because you are holding that direction. Yes? Well, this game will stop you along the x-axis if you're colliding with an object while jumping, even after you've cleared it along the y-axis. In order to jump over obstacles like this, you have to first jump, get high enough to clear it, and then press the horizontal direction. I hate this because while it's a small thing, it makes playing the game feel like surgery. What's even worse is you can look as if you've made a jump, but just not clear it? I hate these specifically because if you listen closely, it's actually making the ground contact sound. This is at its worst over instant death pits, which this game has a lot of. That sound is so annoying because you're going to hear it a lot. Whenever I was struggling in a stage, it was usually because of this. It's too pixel perfect, and I'm not alone in thinking that. The bad jumping seems to be everyone's main gripe with this game. As bad as that is though, it's still playable and I was able to adapt to it. For the most part anyways. Honestly, the first 4 worlds of this game were pretty chill. It's typical platformer stuff. Each world consists of 3 stages that take about a minute or 2 to beat. There are split paths at the end of some worlds to different sets of stages. 100 collectibles gives you an extra life. There's full health pickups, extra lives, and power-ups. Starting with the 3rd world, you'll get a boss fight about every 9 stages. Pretty basic stuff, but the positives make it enjoyable. Yeah, there's the occasional jank or complete bullshit, but it was chill. It's one of those games where parts of it suck, but getting good at it feels genuinely rewarding. And then I got to Ancestral Bones. This world is a rude awakening for anybody that's not willing to adapt to this game's jank and anything else it might throw at you. If you're not prepared to struggle, this is where you stop. I wouldn't blame people for quitting. I almost threw in the towel myself. But on this channel, we don't give up. We get better. Up until now, the game has been pretty friendly with the amount of resources in a level. Lots of power-ups and collectibles. When you die, however, you lose your sword and any power-up you had. Hasn't been that big of a deal yet, because you can usually just recollect one. Some levels don't have them, but others usually do, and you will always be given a sword at the beginning of a boss fight, so your game can't be put into an unwinnable state. It also saves at the beginning of every world, so if you lose all your lives and have to continue, you won't lose much progress. However, it resets your lives and status completely, so every time you continue, you'll have 4 lives, no sword, and no power-ups. There is no sword in the entirety of Ancestral Bones. If you enter this world with a sword and die, that's it. You cannot collect another one until you complete the world. When you don't have a sword, you can't destroy these objects to drop items. It makes the game much harder because now you don't have access to as many resources within that level. You are left with finding whatever power-ups are placed in the level naturally. And honestly, this set of levels feels kinda unfinished. The collectibles are sparse, and there's some random platforms and places that seem like a death trap. If that wasn't bad enough, this is where the game really starts to ramp up its usage of one-hit death pits. Outside of this one segment in Soul Cliff 3, most stages don't have instant death sprawled across the bottom of the screen, just bits and pieces here and there. I'm pretty sure Ancestral Bones is 90% death pits, which also means its stages are 90% platforming. You know what that means. This world is a total slog to get through. Navigating around enemy patterns, timing jumps successfully, and praying that the game works the way it's supposed to. It's a lot of trial and error, and dying when you feel like you shouldn't have. But that's all doable. I mean, you can't really plan for jank, but you can plan for everything else. So what happens when almost an entire stage is jank? Ancestral Bones 3 sucks. This is what made me almost quit. When you first start this stage, you see a new obstacle, this platform that extends up from the bottomless pit. You jump onto it, and it starts traveling right while slowly sinking. Okay, so that's how that works. You climb the ladder and you see another one. You then jump on it, and nothing happens. So you jump on it again, and then you sink to the bottom and die. Both of these platforms look exactly the same. Why do they work differently? The first time I got to this stage, I only had one life, so I got a game over. I don't think there's any reasonable way to complete this stage the first time you get to it. I struggled through stages 1 and 2 to get there again. I have no issues with the first platform. Okay, but if the second platform sinks so fast, how the hell am I supposed to get over there? Oh, I see. You have to keep jumping. It only sinks fast when I stand on it. Shit, another game over. Alright, come on, let's get there again. You know, it's so weird. How come the first platform doesn't sink that way? Oh, I see. It does when you jump on it for a second time. Good to know. Let's see if I can do it this time. Yes, get the extra life. Just gotta get to that ladder and... It's time to take a step back and dissect this room a bit, because this stage is a great showcase of the worst parts of this game. Bad design made even worse by poor programming. So typically when you introduce a new gimmick to a player, you're supposed to do it in an environment that's safe. That allows them to make mistakes and experiment with it so they understand its mechanics. The way this platform is introduced, it tricks the player into thinking that they're using it as intended. There's no reason to jump on it a second time to actually make it sink like the next platform. All of the collectibles here can be obtained simply by standing still. So, naturally, when you get to the second platform, you jump on it, expecting it to behave the same way, but it doesn't. You have to jump on it a second time, and then it starts sinking rapidly when you touch down, catching you off guard. There's no synergy whatsoever between these two platforms. Both work in completely different ways, and I don't think either is what was originally intended. Here's what they should have done. Both platforms start sinking rapidly immediately upon touching them, but the first platform lacks the bottomless pit, so there's a safety net. Then, place collectibles in the air so you're encouraged to jump and realize that it affects how the platform sinks. That'll prepare you enough for the second platform, which is harder to deal with. Okay, that's the platforms out of the way. Now what about this ladder? How do ladders work in your average platformer? Let's use the vines in Super Mario World as an example. Step 1. Casually approach the vine. Step 2. Press up to begin climbing. Simple enough. So how do ladders work in Mastema? Anytime you physically exist in the same space as the ladder, congratulations, you're climbing it. However, when you initially cling on, you keep your momentum for a split second. Because of that, it's extremely easy to fall off this ladder given the situation. There is no way to get to this ladder without being in the downward arc of your jump. The only way to do this successfully is to jump for the ladder and then hold right for dear life as you slip off of it while releasing it the minute you hit this platform. This is just bad. Honestly, they should have had the platform first. That would have been more reasonable. The way it's set up, it makes this world's difficulty spike even more of an issue. After a lot of attempts, I was able to make it across, so let's head to the level's exit. Oh look, I get a choice here. Let's take the bottom one. You know what? Scratch that. I'm gonna take the top path.
Are you sure about that?
Eye of the Sphinx. We're back to solid ground, so that's a good change of pace. At the start of the first level, you'll see that there's a bunch of collectibles on the left side of the screen, but a wall blocks them. Yep, just as I thought. It's a soft wall. So the game has soft walls now. This is how you introduce a mechanic properly. Give something to entice the player so they get curious and experiment. Overall, Eye of the Sphinx 1 is pretty solid. There's this sword in the middle of the level that is a must get, especially after not having one during Ancestral Bones, but you have to take a leap of faith to continue the level after collecting it. Each world in this game has one or two types of gimmicks. I haven't mentioned them yet because up until now they haven't been much of an issue. That changes with this world. The big gimmick here is these spiked ceilings. They're introduced in Stage 1, but aren't much of a threat. Just walk under them at the right time. Eye of the Sphinx 2 is more of the same, but the timing is stricter. They were a little devious too and placed a pair one after another, followed by one of the jumps I mentioned before where it looks like you should have made it, but didn't. From here on out, I'm going to refer to those specifically as difficult jumps. There's breathing room between each obstacle, but having 3 lined up like that just raises your chances of death. And remember, if you die, no more sword. This level isn't super difficult, but it keeps the pressure consistent. Also, nice bait. After Stage 2, you get the second boss of the game. I ran into one back in the third world, but didn't mention them because I got extremely lucky and took them out on my first try. The Sphinx boss, however... yeah, they're not going to be so easy, so we're just going to have to keep trying. At this point, my main goal is to get back to the boss so I can have another shot at it. I didn't mention it before, but back when I was making my way through Ancestral Bones, I got sick of waiting around for the enemy patterns. So at some point, I just started tanking hits from them if I knew I could still complete the level without dying. I couldn't plan for the bad platforming, but I could plan for the enemy and health pickups. That made me start to think about health differently. It's not always a limit on how many times you can screw up. It's also a counter for how many hits you can tank by choice without dying. You also get your health refilled when you clear levels and pick up health and extra lives, so maybe tanking hits is worth it sometimes. It definitely speeds things up at the very least, if I don't have the sword anyways. Speaking of it, there it is again. Let's grab it. I want to get through these levels as quickly as possible. Oh, I died again. I guess it didn't really matter. You know, I just noticed that that's not the only thing you lose when you die. You lose quite a bit, actually. I knew you lost the sword and whatever power-up you've collected, and a life, obviously, but you also lose all of your collectibles, as in the currency. You know, those jewel things you collect 100 of to get a free life. I never actually realized that before. And you know, some of the areas scattered with them are off the beaten path and kind of dangerous. Given that they're so easy to lose, maybe I should focus on completing the levels and less on collecting them. Alright, we're at the boss again. I'm starting to get the pattern, but no cigar. Let's give it another shot. Again, focus on cleaning the levels and less on the jewels. There's that sword again. Let's grab that. Shit, where's the platform placed again? Damn it. Okay, come on, get back there. There it is again. Wait a minute. Do I even need it? I mean, I can just lose it immediately. My focus is on defeating the boss. I get a sword before him regardless. It's not like I actually have to have it until then. I don't need the sword. And that's when I realized something. That's not a weapon. It's a resource. If you don't have the sword, you can still beat the level. Having it just changes the way you approach the level. Without it, I just platform my way around enemies and tank hits when required. I had no choice but to do it in Ancestral Bones, but here, I'm doing it by choice. I'm confident in my platforming, so going for this rather risky sword isn't really worth it. And look at that. I was right. I was able to make it to the boss level without it. Let's see if I can do it this time. Hell yeah! What's next? So this is where things start to get interesting. From here on out, I'm going to be spoiling a huge chunk of the game. But before that, I have a few things I'd like to mention. First off, I don't know if playing this on Steam Deck was honestly the best decision. There are some micro stutters, and while it didn't really bother me, I think overall they did make the game a little bit harder, especially with the small amount of input lag introduced by my capture setup. It's not the optimal experience, but it's fine. Playing it on a PC using optimized controls via X-Padder or Joy2Key might be the best experience. It is also worth noting, if you choose to play this on Steam Deck, don't mess with the Proton options after you start playing. At one point, I swapped to a different version to see if I could eliminate the micro stutters, and it completely erased my save file. When I switched back, my save was still gone and I had to play through everything again, which means I had to complete Ancestral Bones a second time. I wasn't recording during, but I actually beat Ancestral Bones 3 on my first try. No, seriously, that actually happened. I wish I'd got it on tape. Finally, the game has saving issues. When I tried to continue from one of my alternate paths, it put me on the other one for some reason. I didn't really lose any progress there, but later on it failed to save through an entire world. Luckily, it wasn't one of the super difficult ones, so I was able to catch back up easily. The game isn't very long, but if you're struggling with it and aren't having fun, I feel like this random progress loss will turn you off of it completely. If any of the issues I've mentioned haven't turned you away, skip to here for my final thoughts. Okay, let's continue. Red innards! Red innards is pretty average as far as Mastema levels go. The main gimmick here is these teleporters I just showed you. You jump in front of them and they open up and spit you out somewhere else. They can be a little jank to deal with sometimes, but they're not too bad. What's more annoying is these fish that jump out of the water. Stomach acid? If you're riding a platform and a fish jumps out in front of you, not only will you take a hit, but it'll also push you off. That's so annoying. I don't think any other enemies in the game have been able to push you around like that. Jumping while on moving platforms isn't exactly the easiest thing to do in this game either, and usually results in you getting killed. There's also these mouths in Stage 2 that can chomp you, but they're not that big of a deal. Just more timing obstacles. Pretty easy to navigate at this point. Oh, is this another soft wall? I can't move. I think my game is soft locked. Yeah, this world feels unfinished. Well, unpolished more like it. There's a few signs of being rushed. I noticed that you can skip entire chunks of some of the stages due to the double back level design. It took me a couple of tries, but I was able to get past it pretty easily. Oh look, another sword. Yeah, I don't need that. Deceitful Sands. Yes, I am so excited to talk about this place. The background track for this world is easily my favorite in the entire game. Reminds me a lot of Tarm Ruins and the Lost Woods from Oracle of Seasons. It totally nails that mysterious, curiosity-piquing echo and perfectly fits the stage. As soon as you start, it doesn't look like you can go anywhere. There's a few platforms and some enemies, but it's mostly quicksand at the bottom. I really doubt I can touch that. Am I supposed to ride across on this fly? Okay, definitely not that. Are there invisible platforms? Nope, that's not it. Wait a minute, it didn't kill me immediately though. Can I... Yes! That's why it's called Deceitful Sands. The quicksand will kill you, but not immediately. If you keep hammering jump, you'll stay at the top of it and can make your way across. These sinking platforms are similar to the ones in Ancestral Bones, but less sinky. You basically just ride them across and jump off, but they don't respawn, so if you screw up, you have to die on purpose and start over. There's also these wall worm sucker dudes. Those are most definitely an enemy. I'm not getting anywhere near... Is that a sword? Okay, come on. Come on. Oh, yes, yes! Come on, come on, come on! Get it! No, come on! Yes, yes, yes! 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 I got the sword! I got the sword! Hell yeah, I am so ready! Bring it on! Oh. Oops. Overall, Deceitful Sands is a well-designed set of levels that's a joy to play through, with a few minor issues. I think if the entire game had been this good, more people would be into it. Luckily, for the most part, the rest of the game stays close to this level of quality. Eternal Ice. So this is the state-mandated ice physics level. It gives you lots of momentum constantly, so you overall move faster and have more control in the air, making the jumps easier. It's honestly pretty fun, although it can be easy to slip into stuff. You get precision by jittering around like this. It throws you at first because it's so different from the rest of the game, but honestly, I think it makes the game easier, and it's really fun to play with them. There's a unique death animation for this world too if you accidentally fall in the ice water at the bottom. This is one of the worlds that's got a boss, and fittingly the fire power-up works the best against them. I guess I should talk about those now. I've been calling these power-ups, but the game actually refers to them as specials. I haven't mentioned them until now because they're just another form of attack. They can be incredibly useful, but there's so many of them they end up not feeling very impactful. I get the feeling they're scattered everywhere to help balance the difficulty caused by the programming issues. They look really cool and cause loads of damage. Some are more useful than others, however. This giant demon that travels across the screen from left to right is my favorite because if you move the screen with him, he'll keep killing enemies. He covers up level assets though, making platforming with him extremely difficult. Risk, reward. My least favorite is this tornado, which has a pretty small damage radius and disappears quickly. Anyways, the fireball orbits around you kinda like the Bible in Castlevania, which is good because you want to stay fairly close to the ape boss. He's my favorite boss in the entire game. His patterns are pretty easy to memorize, so it's mainly about dodging with the ice physics, which is fun. I felt like a badass taking this guy out. Cursed Galleon. When I first started this world, not having the ice physics threw me off a lot, and I died immediately. That's okay though, because there's a sword at the very beginning of this level. This is another good set of levels accompanied by great music. It's a lot of platforming, but it felt very balanced. Lots of collectibles too. Solid stuff. The big gimmick here is these cannons that are easy to dodge, but the cannonball's explosion is massive. It's a one-hit kill, but it's weird because I suffered a few direct hits with no damage. There's also this spot where you can jump off screen and it completely kills your forward momentum. Despite all that, this is the easiest world in the entire game and I was able to clear it in under 10 minutes. Nice change of pace compared to how difficult things were for a bit. Screaming Hanged Men is the most over-the-top name I've seen for a world in a video game. Kinda disappointing because I don't think it quite delivers on that naming scheme. Is there hanged men? Yes. Do they scream? Kinda. I guess they made up for it by having the death scream in this world even more ridiculous for whatever reason. The big gimmick here is this set of 4 disappearing platforms that go in a pattern. And when I say the big gimmick, I mean this set is copy-pasted throughout these stages. Stage 2 has a massive string of them all in a row, where you're actually required to take leaps of faith. But it works out as every set of 4 goes in the exact same intervals. It's all timing. A simple mechanic done solidly. Not a whole lot to say about this world though. I like the idea, but for a place called Screaming Hanged Men, there sure isn't a lot of them. Infernal Climb! Alright, here we go. This set of levels is very good. The perfect mix of challenge and difficulty, with only a single issue. For starters, the music here is fantastic. There's some good sound design here too. These volcanic vents spew out flames and sound really cool. These levels are packed top to bottom and require you to explore most of them to finish it. In Stage 2, the upper part of the level is packed with collectibles, but you have to get through an absolute gauntlet of timed volcanic vents and tricky jumps before you can claim your reward. This might seem pretty lopsided, but it's a trap. See, it takes a lot of time to get all the collectibles and make your way back, and right before the exit is one of those difficult jumps I mentioned. That reward wears you down because it's just a straight line, so you're likely to lose your focus and mess up by the time you make it back. The boss here is this giant worm that was shown off in some of the trailers. This one is pretty unique as you don't have to kill it, just run right and pray he doesn't overtake you. There's a bunch of breakable walls in the way, and if you don't do everything just right, it's easy to fail. I was able to get through after a few tries, but I tried to backtrack to get some collectibles and found out the boss's hitbox was still active. When I finally beat him again, I couldn't even believe I did it.
Okay, managed to get through that.
Field of Thorns! Did that motherfucker just reflect my projectile? Field of Thorns revolves around you managing your health like a resource. You will take damage, and you just have to shrug it off and keep going. There are spikes and enemies everywhere that will wear you down, mixed in with bottomless pits and moving platforms. It's a lot of precision platforming, and they aren't pulling any punches. That dude that reflected my sword can only be killed with specials, and he's a little hard to jump over. It's a lot of learning level layout and enemy patterns, and just barely scraping by. There's lots of collectibles in this world, so it's almost worth going for them, provided you're willing to potentially pay the price. Overall, Stage 1 and 2 are very challenging, and keep the heat turned up throughout. Stage 2 in particular took me a lot of tries, but I did eventually get it. So what's Stage 3 like? Absolutely not. This stage is the ultimate test of platforming, precision, and pattern recognition. Oh, and some luck too. There's a handful of those difficult jumps thrown in here. Thankfully though, it's mercifully short. It's all about taking as few hits as possible and making all of the jumps. Difficult, but very doable. This is the kind of level I wish had that huge reward at the end like Infernal Climb 2, but there's very few collectibles here. Idolatry of Pain. Okay, so I'm just gonna say it like it is. This is easily the worst set of levels in the entire game. After I cleared Eye of the Sphinx, I had a fairly easy time with every world that followed it. You know, it was still a challenge, but nothing that made me want to pull my hair out. A couple of continues, took me about half an hour to conquer them. You get the idea. This one took me a couple of days. This world just straight up sucks. Imagine taking every issue this game has and putting it into 3 levels. That's what this world is. I honestly thought it couldn't get any worse than Ancestral Bones, but this is something else. Remember how earlier when I first brought up the platforming I said, on its own it feels okay, it's whenever it has to interact with anything else that it falls apart. That's this entire stage. The crushers from Eye of the Sphinx are back, and now the timing on them is ridiculous. On top of that, a lot of them end with a jump. That wouldn't be that big of a deal, but anytime you jump around these crushers, they mess up your physics. If you jump into the side of them, they'll kill you immediately. If you barely scrape the top of them, you'll lose all your momentum and plummet to the bottom. This one jump in Stage 2, which isn't even one of the difficult ones by the way, is so hard to time properly. Every time I did it, it felt like pure luck. If the crusher doesn't kill you, This jump is going to. This is horrible. At this point, getting through is practically based on luck. There is so much skill involved, I don't actually think it's reasonable for the average player to do this. This stage is also the main reason why I don't think you should play this on Steam Deck. This is the only world where micro-stuttering messed me up. I had to play this one off capture a lot just to practice, because between that and the minimal amount of lag it introduced, it was just too much. Yes, that actually mattered. It's too bad because I do actually like the gimmick this world plays around with. You have this statue you can carry that weighs you down. It doesn't affect the height of your jump, but it makes you move a lot slower. The goal is to use it to help you get past these wind currents. Again, a cool idea, but this jump at the end of stage 2 is freaking ridiculous. There's way too many traps down here. You're almost guaranteed that you don't get another shot if you screw it up. And keep in mind, this comes after that crusher pit I mentioned. I haven't talked about it up until this point, but there's no checkpoints in this game. The levels are short enough, so not really a problem. This is the only time I thought it was genuinely necessary because it's packed so full of things that are just not my fault. There's also these bomber skeletons with a massive explosion that's a one-hit death. Total bullshit. Idolatry of Pain 3 thankfully isn't that bad, but placing this spike at the end here is just pure evil. I don't think it's possible to not take a hit from it. And that sucks, because if you pay attention to the level design at the end, you can see you're actually climbing the steps of the Altar of Mastema. This is it. This is the last world. Let's do it. After that last level, I was pretty terrified of what this game can throw at me. There's a sword right at the start that I highly recommend getting. There's a lot of stuff in this stage, and being able to take out enemies is almost a necessity at this point. However, upon killing the first demon, which is an enemy I've seen before, I noticed it transformed into a lady. Honestly, I was worried this game was going to pull some crap where the more I killed early on, the more enemies I'd run into later down the line. Like there would just be a room packed with them and they'd all attack me. Because I don't consider this a spoiler, as far as I know, killing enemies in the final world doesn't have a downside. You're free to take out whoever you feel necessary. And that's good, because this world is as challenging as you think it would be. Stage 1 is pretty difficult on its own. The sword at the beginning is on the other side of 2 difficult jumps, and if that wasn't enough, there are projectiles flying randomly at you from the other side of the screen. There's no rush, but the jumps make it frustrating. I don't know how many times I would mess one up, resulting in my death. Right after that first demon, you get a glimpse of the woman that's been showering you with projectiles. She's up high above a pit with some crumbling platforms. You can't damage her, so there's no way to stop the flurry of orbs. You just have to push your way through and hope you do the jumps correctly. Once you clear her gap, you're immediately met with another demon while she continues to fire at you. Keep moving right to get away from that, and you're met with the worst challenge of this level. Above another large pit is yet another woman firing projectiles. But these projectiles are a little different. They're huge and imposing. How are you supposed to dodge that? You let one touch you to see what happens, and it carries you. You struggle and make your way right as much as you can, only to find out there is a huge pit that you can't jump over. What you have to do here is pray that she fires one going towards the right side of the screen and jump into it, and then hope it carries you to safety. This is entirely luck. It's hard enough to get over to the right in the first place because she seems to fire 90% of them to the left. There's no pattern. If one of them touches you, it's almost a guaranteed death because of the rest of the game's jank. Even if you land on a platform, you may just fall through it. Once you're over here on the right, you have to wait, and wait, and wait, until finally she decides to fire one where you need it. And even then, it may not even take you all the way over. Once the stars align and you're finally able to get the one you need, you'll see a knight that will almost definitely take you out. Now's the time to use a special you picked up earlier in the level, and then avoid this pit with a crumbling platform. What a gauntlet! Seriously, stage 1 sucks. It's about 70% luck based and half the jumps here are the difficult ones. Stage 2 initially doesn't seem that bad. There's enemies with actual patterns to learn and difficult jumps, but the entire stage is covered with these different looking pits. I wonder what that's all about. Oh god, I hope that doesn't happen again. Oh no! Stage 2 of Altar of Mastema is pure evil. You cannot miss a single jump, otherwise you're going back. Way back. You only get one shot. This almost made me give up, but thankfully, I realized it doesn't overwrite your progress. You can just quit to the menu and continue like normal. If this had been a hard warp back with progress loss, I would have bailed. Eventually, after a lot of struggle, I was able to get to the end. Having to do it in one shot is insane, but when you're able to do it successfully, I mean, I can't even describe the feeling. I'm ready. Let's beat this game. The final boss of Mastema Out of Hell, by some miracle, doesn't have any jank. This level starts out with a puzzle. Every single special is available to you. However, when you pick one up, it replaces the one you had previously. So you have to be sure to pick up the one you want last. The boss is a genuine challenge, and they have a clear pattern you'll have to learn if you want to defeat them. I died my first try and had to go all the way back. Once again, I'm put in the situation of trying to get to the boss with as many lives as possible. This walled me for a while. Yeah, it's just 2 stages, but they're incredibly frustrating because I can't die. You can't die in stage 1 because then I get less tries. You can't die in stage 2 because you only get one shot. I restarted a lot, often dying on the very first jump and then immediately quitting to the main menu. I struggled over and over and over again to get through these stages just so I could make it to the boss. Each time I would survive a little longer, inflict a little more damage to them, but not enough. I just couldn't do it. And then something incredible happened. This is your final spoiler warning. If you had any interest in this game, go play it now. I got a glitch that benefited me. What luck! Maybe I can beat them this time. No, not quite. Alright, let's try it again. You know, I wonder if I can recreate that. That's not a glitch. It's a level skip. This ignited a fire in me that had gone out. I knew I could do it now. Congratulations, you made it out of hell. I fell out the tunnel of light. Pitch black again. A fire pervaded me. I fell on my knees dying, but I didn't feel pain. Not nearly. That fire was waking me up from a compelled and artificial sleep, regenerating my burnt and disfigured body. I get up. Finally, I remember everything. And that's a word I can't show on YouTube. It's this blurred out one here. You can probably guess what it is. Honestly, this ending was a little jarring, but I get what they're trying to do. They want to communicate that you were playing as the bad guy the whole time, but it comes across so clunky because of the language barrier. Despite that, I can't help but love this. It's presented so brazenly, it made me laugh. And that's Mastema Out of Hell. After you beat the game, you unlock a world select and can play the game freely. I actually went back and picked all the alternate paths so I could play through them myself. Not to talk about them, but because I wanted to experience everything this game had to offer. This game is the definition of why I like the road less traveled. The last review on Steam is from last year, and the one before that is from 3 years ago. This dev is still active and has lots of games on their itch.io page, and they've gotten a lot better, honestly. I tried out this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game they made, and it's honestly pretty good. Genuinely enjoyed my time with it. But as I look at this page, I notice Mastema is not listed. From what I can tell, it was this dev's first effort. Given the negative reception, I get why they may have moved on from it. I don't know. I like it. It looks great and it sounds even better. Yeah, the game is hard, frustrating, and nearly broken at times. But the feeling I got from getting good at it made the struggle worth it. And not to toot my own horn, but there's a special feeling that comes with doing something very few people have. Look at this. I'm in that 2%. I rose to the challenge and did what a lot of other people weren't willing to do. That's why I love the road less traveled, because it yields more unique, special experiences. For someone looking for that, I think this game is worth trying. Here's the best way I can sell it to you. This is Ghoul Boy, a game I bought in a Switch sale a while back. It's going for the exact same kind of thing Mastema is. Ghoul Boy sucks. It's incredibly bland, has even more amateurish programming, and to top it all off, has this bug in the final area that makes all its menus unnavigatable. So, no shop, no pause menu, and you can't even select continue when you die. It forces you to complete the final set of levels in one shot, with no heals and no checkpoints. Exactly like Mastema. Except these levels are not short, and there's no way around them. Didn't think it could get any worse, huh? This is shit. I gave up on it, and I will never play this game again. Mastema, for all its faults, never made me feel that way. It was hard as hell at times, but overcoming that challenge was incredibly gratifying. I still enjoyed it, despite everything that was working against it. However, if we're gonna speak objectively, the game is a 5.5 out of 10. There's a lot of good stuff here, like the art and the music, but the problems like the weird jumping and occasional bad level design really weigh it down. If those were eliminated and it was polished up a bit, it would probably be a 7. At the end of the day though, I do think it's worth giving a shot. You just need to understand what it's going for and what aspects of that it successfully achieves. It wants to be a tribute to the hard retro games of old, but its programming issues means it only slightly delivers on that premise. If you can get over that, it's a very gratifying experience, but it is not for everyone. And that's okay. Sometimes you have to struggle a bit to find something that's worthwhile. So, like usual, while I was editing this video, I started to notice a couple of things that I didn't originally realize when I was writing the script. The main one is that in one of the trailers, I saw a death animation that no matter what I do, I cannot get that to trigger in the build of the game that is on Steam. I have a suspicion that the version of Mastema that is on Steam is an earlier build, and something may have happened to the final one. It is kind of odd that that animation exists in the trailer, and it's not in the final game, and that doesn't seem like the kind of thing that would just be cut randomly. So, Yeah, just some food for thought. If you like this video, leave me one below. If you've got anything to say, let it fly in the comments. And if you subscribe, you can even be here for next time.
That was hell.